It's the only podcast that broadcasts 438 miles between each other here on a cold, chilly November evening as dusk begins to fall here in College Station, and I'm assuming in Lubbock as well. Glad to have you with us here on the Fifth Quarter Podcast, episode number 11 for the second season, episode number 31 overall. George Koff here in College Station with you alongside my co-host and good friend Desmond McLaughlin in Lubbock. Let's check in Lubbock. Desmond, how are you doing on this November the 8th?
Doing pretty good, George. It was a bit chilly today, but I didn't need a need for a sweatshirt, so it wasn't too cold. Um, I'm just happy it's the weekend. Happy we got a game tomorrow. We're off that bye week. I'm pretty excited.
Yeah, they say when the weather starts to get colder, it means the football is getting hotter. So we are in the best part of the year. We got college football starting to get into its home stretch, and college basketball just starting, as well as the NBA, NFL getting into the good part of the NFL. So, this is a time to be alive if you're a sports fan, waiting for the MLB to come back around. Free agency starts in a few weeks, as well as the NHL in full swing. So we should have lots to talk about here and lots to be able to watch over the next few months. All right, Desmond, you ready to get into this one and recap week 10 of the 2019 season?
Let's get this, George.
All right. So A&M obviously took on a opponent, the Texas San Antonio Roadrunners. They're really not that big of an opponent, but it still is a home game at Kyle Field, and you still have to take advantage of it. And for the first time, actually second really of the season, but the first real time, it looked like A&M struggled out of a 11 o'clock start. They didn't look like themselves. They let UTSA come down and score a nice 70-yard scoring drive with a 2-yard rushing touchdown by their quarterback. And then, A&M gets the ball at the 40-yard line, 1st and 10, immediately right after the touchdown. Spiller takes it through the gut. And my friends will tell you, I said that's a bad play. Like the way that they had formed the formation and they were looking at setting up, I'm like, oh, I don't like that formation. And what does Spiller do? Just run right through the gap for a 60-yard touchdown run. So initially I thought it was bad. It obviously turned into good. Aggies got the 45-14 win. Clinched bowl eligibility for the 11th straight year. Desmond, what did you see from that game in College Station last weekend?
Well, George, you're right. I was surprised. Because I think it was like 14-7 after the first quarter.
Correct.
But I knew it would be a blowout. I mean, come on. I'm talking about UTSA here. Come on. No offense against them, but we're just being realistic here.
Yeah, I mean, I want to give credit where credit is due, though. Their quarterback, Narcisse, I believe is how you say it. He went out with a concussion, I learned later. My friends and I were a little bit confused. He got pretty big hit by Anthony Hines late in the third quarter. And then for the rest of the game, they had this other guy in, and he didn't do anything effective, anything. And I looked over to my friend and said, can we get the other guy back in? And then later I found out he had a concussion and was ruled out for the second half. But Narcisse had an effective day against an Aggie defense that has been kind of up and down when you look at it. So UTSA might be able to get bowl eligible. They got a tough 3-game stretch remaining. They've got to get 2 wins. They're 4-5. They've got to get the 2 wins to get to that bowl eligibility status. But we'll see what happens. Either way, it was a good game. Nice weather. We have one more home game left in South Carolina next week. But you go into the second bye week on a really good note. You won yet again. Last time A&M beat Arkansas going into the bye week. This time A&M beat UTSA going into the bye week, and I think having that bye week right before the last big 3 games of the season, South Carolina, Georgia, and LSU, with the last 2 being on the road, it's going to be in a lot. What do you expect to see from this Aggie team as we go into the final 3 games of the season?
Well, George, I forget what I expected the record to be. Do you?
I want to say you said something maybe 7-5 or 8-4.
No, I mean like, because there was a certain point when I said that I thought the record would end that way with the winning percentage the rest of the games, but I don't. I think they'll 1-2 the last few games. I don't see them being Georgia. I don't see them being LSU. I'm sorry, George. I don't see it.
So you think 7-5 is likely the record? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, according to all these ESPN prediction guys, I believe even with that record is what they're predicting, they're still saying that A&M is going to go to the Outback Bowl. I feel like the only reason why that's going to happen is because the SEC is so top heavy this year, and we may get 2 teams in the playoff, which means then the SEC's third place team is going to be put in the Sugar Bowl, which then means the fourth place team is going to be put wherever else, even into another New Year's Six Bowl. So then you get, your selection gets very thin, and all of a sudden you're looking at, the best bowl right now is the Outback. It needs an SEC team. We're going to put A&M in. I believe the biggest prediction right now is Minnesota versus A&M. So that would be a good one. I honestly would take Minnesota in that game, just because I feel like they've got a better and more solid offense. But, you got to wait till Bowl Selection Sunday to see what exactly happens. Meanwhile, we're not really talking bowl eligibility yet. In Lubbock, Desmond, Texas Tech is looking at a potential winning. You got to win 3 games in four attempts to get to 6 wins. You've got West Virginia, TCU, a ranked Kansas State, and Texas remaining on the schedule. In your eyes, in your best eyes, do you see Texas Tech qualifying for bowl season?
Yes.
Okay, and why? Which games do you think they drop? Which one? Of those 4 games, which game do they drop, and which games? Obviously, the other 3 they're going to win. Texas or Kansas? Do they?
I think they're going to lose to TCU.
Oh, you think they get an upset over Kansas State and Texas?
Yes, and let me tell you this, George. Let me tell you right now. Let me close the screen. We are beating Texas this year.
Okay, I mean that's not implausible. You play them in Austin on Thanksgiving, on Black Friday, Thanksgiving weekend,
which sucks.
Do you coming off of a bye week, you get an 11 a.m. start in Morgantown in West Virginia. What are you looking forward to seeing? What do you think you need to be able to see that will convince you that the Red Raiders will be able to get these 3 wins?
Honestly, just hope, George, because I really can't provide any statistical proof to it. It's just hope.
Okay.
Well,
okay. So you're relying on luck and the fact that whatever happens. You're not really focused on we have a.
Bro, you've seen it. We played good against Baylor, arguably one of the top 10 teams in the league. Should have won that game. Then we can play trash against Kansas, Iowa State. You know what I'm saying? You never know.
Well, as I mentioned, they play at 11 o'clock here on the road. Last time we saw them in action, they lost to a Kansas team that ended up getting thwomped at home against Kansas State last week. What do you think is going to happen in this week's game?
I honestly, George, I'm just hoping for a win.
So what do you got? What do you got?
For a prediction?
Prediction
38-24 Tech.
So 2 scores?
Yes, but I think that if we do lose, I want to know Coach Ball's mindset. I know that I don't know if you heard, but he's going through those allegations about him allowing a former Utah State player play on the team. I think he had some sexual allegations against him, and Coach Ball's been dealing with that the last week. So I wonder if that will affect his mindset.
So if that does come into play here, does that mean that his long-term status at Texas Tech, is that gonna be affected, or is it only
because he denied it, of course.
Obviously.
Obviously, I don't know him, but I feel like he wouldn't be that type of dude, I don't think it's something too big yet. I'm not saying it's whatever, it's not wrong. I'm just saying I'm not worried about him losing anything yet, until there's more proof. You know what I'm saying?
Gotcha. Yeah, yeah. For me personally, I feel like if the Red Raiders are gonna win, Jet Duffy has to show up and he has to be good. Um, and I do think that will happen. I got the Red Raiders by 3, 41-38. I think this is a high scoring game. Um, I West Virginia is not good, but look what they did to Baylor. They took Baylor down to the very last few drives, and I feel like they
Hey,
can do that
hey,
with Texas Tech.
hey, we did the same thing, all right? We got screwed over by a call. Let's not forget about that.
So I want to go back to that call just for a second before we get to the rest of the podcast. Do you believe that that call has changed? Kind of was the call that kind of changed the outlook for the season?
I mean, it makes
Because before
sense
that,
because we,
before that, we were looking at a 3-3 Texas Tech team that had just come off of a win over Oklahoma State, had lost to Oklahoma, had looked like they were trending in the right direction. Then you get to Baylor, you pick off Brewer 3 times, can't capitalize. Still, yet you're in the game, and then you get a bad call that
I'm
leads
not,
to 2 losses in 3 games.
yeah, I'm not saying that it like is completely the reason, but I think it helped because again, you said we were a 3-3 team, came off a win against Oklahoma State, very good game, who everyone thought we were gonna lose to. Then you play against a ranked Baylor team who was 11, I believe. Or no, I don't even know, but they were ranked at the time.
They were like
Um,
20th or something, 20,
yeah,
20.
yeah.
No, maybe they weren't even ranked. I don't know.
No, no, they were definitely ranked. They were ranked at the time, and you play a great game. You play best defense ever, and you end up with a loss and all of that hard effort. You know what I'm saying? It will get to your head off a call like that. So now you're sitting at a 3-4 season. You're thinking like you still got to play Texas. You still got to play K State. Just played a great game against one of the best Big 12 teams. After that, you're basically out of the Big 12 race. So it kind of affects the season.
Yeah, Baylor was ranked 22nd at the time when they played Texas Tech in that 33-30 double overtime victory over the Red Raiders. All right. Speaking of Baylor and rankings, let's get into that. We're going to move forward. Um, Again, before we get to that, though, you can watch the Texas Tech game at 11 a.m. tomorrow on ESPN2. And for some reason, Vegas has Texas Tech as a favorite. They're a 2.5-point favorite. So look to see if they cover that or not. All right, we'll get into the rankings. Desmond, I'm pretty sure you probably saw the rankings. It's Friday. We're already getting to the point where we're 24 hours to kick off for some of these games. Honestly, I wasn't too surprised. In fact, my top 5 was very similar to what the college football playoff had. And for that, I really didn't change it much. The only thing I have changed is my 4 and 5 teams, and I'll reveal those in just a second. But did you have any initial thoughts about the top 5? Were you not happy about it, or did you agree with it?
George, my top 5 is completely different.
Okay.
Kind of. After the third position. All right, so obviously I'm going to go Ohio State. I agree. They beat Wisconsin 37. Wisconsin's not a bad team.
Hey, Desmond, I think the College Football Playoff Committee must be listening to the fifth quarter because
Exactly.
we're finally on agreement here that Ohio State is the number 1.
And they have been. They have been.
And Kirk Herbstreit. Kirk Herbstreit's been very, very adamant that Ohio State's the best team in the nation. So to all of those Buckeye fans that I know listen to the podcast, you're welcome. You're welcome for getting some respect on the Buckeyes, all right? All right, Desmond, you have Ohio State 1. Go to 2 through
Bama.
5. Go through
Bama.
2.
Bama 2. LSU
Okay.
3. LSU 3. They did beat Auburn by 3. That was a close game. Good game by them. I'm going to put Georgia 4.
Oh, 3
I'm
SEC teams in the top 4?
George, I believe Georgia's a better team than Clemson and Penn State. And
Okay.
I know people are going to judge you for this, but we got to keep the Big 12 in there. Oklahoma at 5. They had
Desmond.
one game, George. One game. They played bad in. It happens.
Desmond, your 4 and 5 were 20-point favorites and lost. Okay, I don't. I, okay, here's my top 5. That's not that
But
abnormal.
think about Georgia. At the end of the season, besides Georgia, Oklahoma still has a chance of making the playoffs.
Yeah, if they
If the other Big
beat
12
Baylor
team,
twice, if they beat Baylor twice, which they're maybe beat them once, who knows if they can beat them a second time.
and I'm also surprised. I'm also a little surprised that Oklahoma is
They're 9th, by the way.
what?
Oklahoma is ranked 9th in the rankings first college football playoffs first rankings. They're ranked 9th, which
My
is
question. Where's Baylor?
Baylor's number 12, and so is Minnesota, who's the other unbeaten, is at 17. They're the two lowest unbeatens, and what the committee said was due to their out of conference schedule.
I think at least Baylor should be in top 10 at least.
Oh, they should be over Florida, Auburn, who's 10 and 11, maybe even Utah, who's 8. But back to your whole thing with Oklahoma. Oklahoma is 9th in these last rankings, and that is concurrent with the AP poll. The AP poll had Oklahoma at 9th. So I don't know. I kind of buy into what you're saying. Lost to a ranked Kansas State team that does mean some, and Georgia had a loss to an unranked South Carolina team that is not really doing anything, and for all we know, may not even get to bowl eligibility. Here's my top 5. I've got Ohio State like you do at 1, and just like the committee does. Number 2, I go with the committee, LSU. LSU's been better than Bama. Obviously, that will be put to the test this week. Number 3, I have Alabama. I just think because of Tua, status is unknown, and what Bama had to do to Arkansas and Tennessee, and you kind of look at it. Yes, there's the results were there, but I just feel like LSU's a better team. Number 4, this is where I start to disagree. Penn State is good. Committee had them at 4. For me, I just don't see it. I don't see the if you're looking at out of conference weakness, they played Buffalo and they played Buffalo. They played maybe Kent State. They played Pitt out of conference. They played. If we're looking at Penn State's schedule, and I'll pull this up here in just a second, they played Idaho, Buffalo, and Pitt as their 3 non-conference. They beat Idaho by 70, Buffalo by 32, and Pitt by a touchdown. Okay, that's not the same level as Baylor and Minnesota's out of conference schedule as far as I'm concerned. So my 4, so I had Ohio State, LSU, Bama. My number 4 is Clemson. I believe Clemson is if you're looking at undefeated and you're looking at them, you can't look at what happened last year. You have to look at this year. Clemson is number 4. And for me, number 5, I actually think Oregon sneaks in there. You could argue Utah could be that placement there. But I think 5 is Oregon. And then my number 6, if I had to choose a 6 who's just outside, I would put Georgia, strictly because the way that the schedule they've played. But I wouldn't rule out Oklahoma either. I feel like you made a very good argument here with Oklahoma. And you look at it, they have a ranked loss. Georgia doesn't. Oklahoma has a loss, 1 loss only, and they're still trying to fight their way through the Big 12, and they control their own destiny in the Big 12.
I have a question, and I know it might seem crazy, but I've been thinking about it, and the more I look at it, I'm not saying it's happened, but I think it's going to be possible. Is there a possibility that you might not even see an SEC team in the playoffs?
I was actually considering that as well, strictly because the SEC might beat up on everybody. So Bama,
Exactly.
LSU. Let's say LSU beats Alabama. Okay, let's say LSU then gets to the SEC championship, but
They
loses
Exactly.
loses to a 2-loss Georgia, theoretically speaking. You're not going to put a 2-loss SEC champion in. You're not going to put 2-loss Georgia, and LSU lost to a 2-loss to a Georgia.
Let's say Ohio State goes undefeated.
Yeah.
Wins. Clemson, obviously, I already think Clemson's they're gonna go undefeated.
Yeah.
And win.
And then what happens to the Big 12?
Oregon or Utah, you know what I'm saying? You have Oregon or Utah.
And then what happens to the Big 12?
Oh, exactly, Big 12, exactly.
So I feel like at this point, this is the week that's going to help us decide who, you can't rule out anybody. You're down to the point of the season where as long as you have 0 or 1 loss, you're kind of still in the conversation. That puts us at Ohio State, LSU, Alabama, Penn State, Clemson, Georgia, Oregon, Utah, Oklahoma, Florida, Baylor, Wisconsin, Michigan. No, Michigan has 2 losses. Wisconsin, Minnesota. Even, I mean, it's not crazy, but even Wake Forest. Okay, hear me out about Wake Forest. They have 1 loss, and it was to a very good, a pretty decent Louisville team. Let's say they do the improbable and beat Clemson. Think about this, Desmond. If they do that, you know who'd be leading that division?
Who?
Wake Forest, because they would each Clemson and Wake Forest would have 1 loss, and they would both Wake Forest would own the tiebreaker. So then, instead of a Clemson team that would be going to the ACC championship game, Wake Forest would, and then you get a Wake Forest 1-loss team that wins the ACC. I feel like they kind of stand right up there with just about anybody. Would you put a 1-loss Wake Forest team in over a undefeated Baylor? Potentially. I mean, I feel like at this point, as long as you have 0 or 1 losses, you're still in the conversation. And of course, the biggest games of the week. I keep moving here as we need to. We were going to talk about Willie Taggart, of course, got fired from Florida State this week. Quick thoughts, Desmond. Do you think this was 2 questions? Do you think this was a positive thing for Florida State to do? And do you think how relevant or how many years is it going to take Florida State to finally get back on track and be in a position to win ACC championships and national championships?
I don't really know much about it. All I'm going to say is I remember back in the Jameis Winston days. Remember that? I think Florida State had the record for most consecutive wins in a row.
They did. It was 19 or something like that.
They were trying to get back to where they were. It really depends on who they hire. Could be 3 years, I mean, we're seeing teams like Kansas, UNC, new hires, who are they're not up there, but they're making names for themselves, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Kansas is competing a little bit here in the Big 12. I remember I said 4 or 5 years, they're competing a little bit here. They gave Texas a run for the money. They beat us.
So we'll have to wait and see, is what you're basically saying.
Yeah.
Okay. Of course, the biggest games of the week, we have, for the first time in the AP poll era, we have 2 undefeated matchups this late in the season on the same weekend. That's LSU and Alabama in the AP poll, 1 versus 2, 8-0 apiece, and Penn State-Minnesota, 5 and 13th ranked, respectively, also 8-0 apiece. We also have a big matchup in the Big 12, 2 big matchups, as Kansas State heads to Austin to face the Longhorns, and Baylor travels to Fort Worth to face the TCU Horned Frogs. And finally, another matchup in the Big Ten that's something to watch for is the other ranked, a top 25 ranked matchup, as Iowa takes on Wisconsin, and that should be a good one. All right, Desmond, I'm going to call this a 90-second breakdown. College basketball started this past week. In 90 seconds or less, give me your thoughts about this past week in college basketball.
Well, George, of course, you're going to always have Duke. Kentucky, too, they beat the number 1, Michigan State. I know it is early, but they did win. They're going to be strong. Let me tell you this, George. Let me tell you this.
Okay. You got 75 seconds, by the way.
Jamias Ramsey, Texas State. We're going back this year, George. I feel it. I went to the game. I was excited. They had this new Russian guy, Andre. I don't even know how to pronounce his last name. Sakasa, something like that. He gets about 3 minutes per game, but I love that man. I remember I was yelling at Coach B, and I was telling him, I was like, put Andre in. 5 minutes later, Andre started running in.
Okay.
I mean, he did airball his first shot, but it's because he hits the weight room too much. But I'm ready. I'm ready for the season. I do know that we're really hyping up the game against Kentucky here. They're giving free if you complete this challenge, you can get free seats to the Kentucky game.
You got 30 seconds, by the way.
No, I'm just ready for the season. I'm ready to see how Trey Jones does. I heard that he's a candidate for the Naismith Award. I'm ready for Tyrese Maxey. How he does with Kentucky. Those are my main ones. I think Duke and Kentucky will go far. Michigan State's supposed to be pretty good. We'll see. All right, your turn, George.
Oh, perfect timing, Desmond. Talk about beating the buzzer right there. I want to say A&M looked pretty good. We have this guy from Turkey. We call his first name is Yuvaz. Yuvuz. That's it, Yuvuz. So it sounds like booze when you're cheering for him, but it's
Oh my
Yuvuz. So and he had like 9 points in the season opener or something like that. The bro is like 6'9" or something. He's ginormous, and he's just playing post and just kind of getting the rebounds and can shoot if he has to. A&M has had some recent injuries. TJ Starks is going to be out for 2 to 3 weeks, as well as Josh Nebo. We do not have a timetable on him. Coach Buzz Williams said that he was out with an undisclosed injury, did not even practice in the offseason, so we don't know what his status is. My guess is he'll come back maybe after when we come back in January, maybe earlier. But we do get a really tough test early with Gonzaga coming to College Station, so that should be a good one. Admin Gilder, who's a grad transfer from A&M, now playing for the Bulldogs, gets to come back and his return to Reed Arena, so that should be a good one. We do get Oregon State at home as well. And in the SEC Big 12 Challenge, you were talking about do you guys get Kentucky in the SEC Big 12 Challenge, or is that just a regular non-conference matchup?
I think it's a regular non-conference matchup.
Okay. For ours in the SEC Big 12 Challenge, we get Oklahoma State here in Reed Arena, so that should be a good one. Other than that, we traveled to Disney World of all places for our tournament. You know how everyone goes to a tournament, like in Christmas time or Thanksgiving, Christmas time. We traveled to the Orlando Invitational or whatever it's called. We play Harvard, and then we'll either play Maryland or Harvard again, or I don't know. We'll get 3 games. We guarantee 3 games, and against either Harvard, Maryland. I want to say UCF is in that region or in that tournament. I could be wrong. Either way, it should be a good tournament. Should get us to get some wins on our resume. I'm going to make a bold statement here. I think A&M is going to finish above 10th place in the SEC out of 14. And I believe that will be because of their non-conference schedule. I think that A&M should be able to sneak in to the tournament. I would, obviously I'm hoping that will happen. It'll be our first time back to the tournament since 2017. Correction, 2017. So yeah, we'll see what happens. But yeah, I'm hoping we get back to the tournament. And if we don't get back this year, this will be the last year we don't go to the tournament under Buzz. Otherwise, we'll just keep going up from there. Speaking of going up, hey Desmond, I want to tell you, you got your upset pick right last week. The Georgia Bulldogs took down the Florida Gators, and that was a upset pick versus upset pick. And the Bulldogs did it to my Gators. So you're back to 4-6, and I am too. So we're looking to try to keep that momentum moving as we have some big tests this week. All right, Desmond. No pun intended. Let's address the elephant in the room. LSU takes on Alabama in Tuscaloosa. Everyone's going to be there. Game day, SEC Nation, the president, let alone 100,000 fans. Winner's going to control the SEC West. And for me, 8 years ago, we saw the game of the century. That was a 9-6 game. This year, game of the century part 2, we get an offensive shootout. I like the Crimson Tide. Oh, gosh, it tears me apart to say that. I like the Crimson Tide in this one by 3, 43-40. Desmond, what about you?
I'm so glad you agreed with me, George.
Oh.
I also think Alabama's going to win this game. I think, George, every single week I've had Alabama ranked higher than LSU.
This is fair.
Tua's gonna do what Tua's gonna do.
What's your score?
I think it's gonna be a low scoring game. I'm ready to watch this game. I think this would be I'm gonna be so mad if this isn't like a game and one team just runs away with it. I'm gonna be so upset.
I mean, last year we had a 26-0 or 29-0 victory by Bama in Death Valley in a game that we thought was going to be even better and bigger and blah blah blah.
I want a game like LSU and A&M was last year.
Back and forth and just exciting. I agree with you on that one. Yeah. And you know what? We're not going to have to wait much longer. We got less than 24 hours before that game kicks off. That's 2:30 kick on CBS. So find your local CBS station and tune in. Should be a good one from Tuscaloosa. And if you're curious, see who Corso picks. Tune in to College Game Day at 8 Central, 9 Eastern from Tuscaloosa. All right, Desmond, the other big undefeated matchup, Penn State-Minnesota. We talked about it already. Biggest test of the season for the Golden Gophers. Game day, I feel like, should have been here. More attention should be added at this game. Either way, I feel like Penn State's going to prove why the Penn State-Ohio State game is going to mean a lot to the playoff rankings and to playoff implications. And because of that, I don't see the Minnesota being able to. I feel like Minnesota's going to be very close, just not be able to get over the hump. I've got the Nittany Lions 31, Golden Gophers 27. What about you?
Yeah, George, I agree. I think Penn State just has too much firepower. And I think they're ready. I have them winning 38-10.
Oh my goodness. 30 by 4 touchdowns?
38-10?
Yeah, 4 touchdowns?
Indeed, George.
Aye. So do you think with this, do you think that takes Minnesota out of the rankings, or do you believe that just kind of, because they're already at 17, a loss like that would, I don't know, maybe just destroy them? I mean, it would be to the 4th best team in the nation.
I think so.
Okay. Well, again, that is ABC's 11 o'clock kickoff game from TCF Bank Stadium in Minneapolis. Penn State is a 7-point favorite, so you can tune into that one. All right. The game Desmond mentioned about 5 minutes ago, Baylor TCU, or maybe at the top of our podcast, Baylor TCU. Baylor is 11th ranked in the AP poll, 12th ranked in the college football playoffs. And of course, on the quest to an undefeated season, you're going to have some little trap games and little chances to lose. Just 2 weeks ago, we saw a Texas team that thought that they could maybe go into Fort Worth and get a win, and instead, TCU just handed it to them, like handed that L to them like you would a nice meal right on a silver platter. I feel like apparently this game has a title called the Revivalry. I don't know, because they're both Christian-related schools. Baylor being Baptist, TCU being Christian. And I feel like Baylor is going to continue on their perfect journey. I've got the Baylor Bears by 11, which means they would cover big time, cover the 2.5-point spread. Desmond, what about you?
George, this is where it ends.
Oh, is this your upset?
No, it's not. But this is an upset. George, Baylor got away from us 3 weeks ago.
Sounds like you're salty.
TCU's not going to let that happen. It's going to be a high-scoring game, shootout, Big 12 offensive game, 59-49 TCU.
I mean, I got a high-scoring game in 41-30, but 59-49 Desmond, Matt Duggan, whatever the TCU's quarterback's name, barely just got cleared to play today. You don't know what his status is going to be. And Charlie Brewer, I don't know if he can sling it that well. I'll take your word for it. 59-49. I don't know. Maybe, are you thinking home crowd's going to play into that, or do you just think it's going to be all TCU by the beginning?
Home crowd, I think Baylor's going to go into it cocky.
Ooh. Well, we'll have to wait to see what happens there. Another 11 a.m. kick, this one on FS1 from Amon G. Carter in Fort Worth. All right, the other Big 12 matchup that's worth watching, not saying Texas Tech, West Virginia is worth watching, but this are against two big teams. Kansas State comes into Austin ranked again and goes to face the Texas Longhorns. The Longhorns have gotten healthy after a much-needed bye week. Unfortunately, that's not going to do much for them here. Wildcats stay in the hunt for a Big 12 race. I've got the Kansas State Wildcats 37, Texas Longhorns 28. What about you, Desmond?
George, I hate to say this, but this is my upset pick of the week.
Good grief, Desmond. This one over TCU?
What? Yes. You really,
Okay.
you really think Kansas State's gonna beat Texas?
Yes, I do. I really do. They beat this Oklahoma team like it was cutting through butter, like slicing through butter. What are they going to do to this Longhorn team? It's going to be like they're chopping through some nice tender ribs and sending them back to, and leaving Austin with a win.
George, who have they beaten?
Oklahoma.
That's it.
So that's enough to get me on the Kansas State hype train.
7-2.
It should have been more than that, but okay.
We're talking about a Texas team. No, you're right. You're right about them in the beginning when you said they're overhyped. You're totally right. They did lose to TCU. TCU is one of those sleeper teams, and they did lose to Oklahoma, one of the best teams in the. But the LSU. They kept the games against LSU and Oklahoma very close. Two very good teams.
What's your score?
I don't honestly, George. I don't think it's gonna be close. 42-28 Texas. I don't think it's gonna be close. I think Kansas State. They should not be ranked based off one win.
I can tell you
because teams have bad games. Teams have great games. Teams have bad games.
Yeah, but even if teams have bad games, you still deserve to get credited with big wins, and the big win was with Oklahoma. You took on a top 5 opponent at the time, and what did you do? You just dismantled them.
They won by 7.
Okay, Desmond, that's a game that is, when you look at the score, you're like, oh, that's not what happened. It was 38 to 20 with 5 minutes to go. They had to let Oklahoma get some points on the board. Otherwise, it was going to look like, oh, Oklahoma didn't show up to the game. They didn't show up. And what did they have to do? They had to pray that an onside kick went their way. That's not, in my opinion, if you're relying on the onside kick, it means you've run out of time. You've shown that you've gone to every little miserable situation, and you were just hoping for something to happen. At that point, that means the other team deserves the win because they've dominated. I'll take your word that it's going to be an upset, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. That game is at 2:30 on ESPN, and Texas, to the much chagrin of Desmond, is a touchdown favorite. So
Thank you.
Technically, it wouldn't be an upset if we're talking Vegas, but if we're talking rankings,
okay, but you're just making it seem like Kansas State was a way better team.
I am, because they are. Look at what they did to a Kansas team that barely almost beat Texas. A Kansas team that almost beat Texas. What did they do? They went on the road, they buried them, and they said, thank you very much, have a nice day, and are looking ahead to this game. That's all. I'm going to leave it at that because, go Wildcats. All right, we got a few games to finish here, so we need to get going.
Yes, Kansas State.
Iowa, Wisconsin, top 25 clash. I feel like this is only intriguing because of the rankings, and I don't know why Iowa is still ranked. I've got another dud by the Hawkeyes. Play jump around in the fourth quarter with this game sealed like a nice little gift. Wisconsin wins big, 41-20.
No, I got you good at that. I had Wisconsin winning pretty big too, 38-17.
Yeah, this Iowa team does not deserve to be ranked. Sorry, Iowa. Tough for you to hear that. 3 p.m. in Fox to watch that slaughter happen. All right, Desmond. Western Kentucky and Arkansas. You're probably asking yourself, why was this game on here? Well, let me tell you. Chad Morris was at SMU. He has his 2-7 Baconators. That's what we're referring to them now. Not Razorbacks, Baconators. Okay. and they've done nothing in the last few weeks to show me that they can contend with Western Kentucky and the Hilltoppers. And their mascot, Big Red, looks like just a big blob. Literally, this thing is a blob that just has a big mouth and just goes. Oh. So they fought. I can't even remember that A&M Arkansas game at this point because they put up a fight and it looked like that was their season. That was it. But Chad Morris was so confident that they were going to be able to get some wins that he created this thing called Club Dub. Okay, like the Bears do, Club Dub, and they've used it once because they created it against Colorado State, and that was it. They've used it. They've gotten 2 wins, but used it once. I'm sorry. Things have just crumbled, and I don't know if this is even an upset because Arkansas is only favored by 1.5, and Western Kentucky is no slouch. I'm going to venture the guess that Arkansas, Chad Morris, his seat might be on fire by the time this game's over. I've got the Western Kentucky Hilltoppers from the Conference USA shocking the Arkansas Razorbacks, 37-35. Desmond, what about you?
I don't know. I like Arkansas in this game, 21-19. I do know that they're having a tough season, but I just think that their experience they have against these tough SEC teams will prevail.
And that game is at 11 o'clock on the SEC network, so you can watch that potential upset occur. Either way, Arkansas, Chad Morris, does he survive the season and come back for a 3rd season, or do you think he's gone after the end of the season?
I think he's gone.
Oh, got another coach potentially on the chopping block. All right, Illinois and Michigan State. Desmond, if I told you this, one team has gotten here with a chance to end the season strong, okay? The other team is Illinois. That put aside, the Fighting Illini have traveled to East Lansing looking for win number 6 to go bowling for the first time in 5 long years, okay? They have not won a bowl game since the 90s. Since the 90s. Desmond, we weren't even born the last time they won in a bowl game. They will celebrate after a game winning field goal. I've got the Illinois Fighting Illini, which is really repetitive. 34, Michigan State Spartans 31.
I don't know. I'm just not feeling your picks today, George. I don't know what's going on here.
I love life on the wild side sometimes.
I have the Spartans win this game 37-22.
And if that does come into play, Desmond, you would be playing to the spread. In fact, the spread is a 14.5-point spread for the Spartans. So, obviously, I'm going against Vegas, and you are going right in line with them. So, we'll see what happens there. All right, last 2 games, Liberty and BYU. Independents don't have their own conference yet. These are 2 independents that are playing each other, so maybe this is a quote-unquote conference game. But Liberty, Desmond, if I had to ask you, between these 2 teams, which team would you say is bowl eligible already? Just without just thinking about it. Which team would you think would be bowl eligible?
BYU.
Wrong. Okay, wrong. There'll be Liberty Flames that are bowl eligible, and the BYU is 4-4, looking for wins number 5 and 6. Despite Liberty making this a comeback attempt, BYU's search for 6 wins gets 1 win easier. They're too good at home. I've got the Cougars in this one, 44-33. What about you?
Oh wow. Actually, I have a good amount of friends that play for Liberty. But I have BYU in this one. I have them winning 20-7.
So you're going against friendship, huh? And you're going against friendship and taking your gut.
I'm just being realistic, George.
I mean, I'm with you on that one. BYU is a 17-point favorite. I've not seen that big of a favorite for BYU since maybe early 2010. Maybe. they're home favorite, which doesn't mean much, but 6:30 kickoff on ESPNU if you're interested in watching that game, because there really is no good night game this year. All right, Florida State and Boston College. This game I feel like had some more hype before Willie Taggart got fired, and yet now it has even more hype now that he has been fired, and it's kind of like, what is this FSU team going to look like after the firing? But I feel like what people should be paying attention to is how good the Boston College Eagles run game is. A.J. Dillon, remember that name for the NFL. This guy has had like 250 rushing yards in the last 2 games. He's averaging like maybe 170 something on the year. Guy is a beast. He's like 5'9", Desmond. He's a tiny little running back, but being able to sneak through holes and getting touchdowns and yards left and right is going to keep him on the scouting report for many teams, at least I hope. And I feel like this game is a home game for Boston College, and that's going to be what puts them over the edge and puts the cherry on top. I've got the Boston College Eagles winning yet again, and another one, winning big. I mean ginormous, 42-20.
Damn, George.
Wait, check that. I'm having a change of thought here. 42-10.
Woo!
30-point win. No mercy for Florida State. No mercy.
Well, I only had Boston College winning 24-6, but now you got me rethinking myself. I'm gonna keep it. I'm just saying. It's like, George. Wow. I hope they lose.
What, you hope Boston College loses?
Yeah.
Why?
Because in that 32-point favorite that you have.
I mean, what was your score? 24-6 in favor of
Boston College.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, Boston College is a 2-point favorite. Now that line has moved back and forth. It started out as a Florida State 2-point favorite. Then Taggart got fired. It became a pick'em. Then it was a Boston College 3-point favorite. Now it's shifted down to 2. So curious to see if that will maybe move one more time before kickoff tomorrow morning, 11 a.m. on the ACC network. All right, Desmond. We said this was going to be a short podcast before we started, but we're kind of dragging this one out a little bit today. We got a scary good game. We have not done very well against the spread the last few weeks. Maybe we can get back on the right board this week. Tennessee, and Kentucky. Kentucky, this line was a pick'em. It was even. It was Tennessee favorite, Kentucky favorite. It's now Kentucky favorite by 1.5 points. For me, the Volunteers have surprised me. You can't. It's hard to surprise George on college football, okay? The Volunteers have been able to do that. And for me, I feel like it's not how you start, it's all about how you finish. Tennessee needs this win, and they'll need one more to get to bowl eligibility. And I believe they will be able to do so. I've got the Tennessee Volunteers on good old Rocky Top taking this one. They take the points, they cover, and the points.
I'm going to go opposite. I'm going to say Kentucky.
Ooh. Yeah. Covers and outright, or just covers?
Covers and outright.
Wow. What why? Just to be different, or?
Yep.
Okay.
We've been picking the same one the last 3 weeks, George. You got to switch it up. That's why our records are looking a little similar right now.
Yeah, you're 3-5 against the spread. I'm 4-5 against the spread. But it's a 6:30 kick. The SEC Network's primetime game from Kroger Field in Lexington, Kentucky. Ooh, too many syllables there. All right, finally, small school week. Desmond, I know you don't have much to say about your small school. They're on the bye week, but they play Memphis next week, so that should be a good one. But this week, it's Boise State week for the Wyoming Cowboys. This is like Bama week for the group of 5. Wyoming's a 14-point underdog, but you know what? You don't count out underdogs that big. They've played some of their best football. They've had a bye week to prepare. This should be a good one on Boise. They are 1-6 on the blue turf, with their only win coming in a bowl game. They're 1-12 against the Broncos. That win came with Josh Allen at the helm in 2016 at home.
Ow.
Look, I may not be, I may be confident, but I know an upset when I see one. I'm not going to say this is my upset because we didn't both pick the game, but make sure you tune in and stay up late for some Mountain West football at 9:15 on ESPN because I tell you, you're going to get a good one. I think the Boise State Broncos are going down. Wyoming will win the Mountain West Conference. They won't just win this game. They will win the entire conference. Mic drop.
Mic drop. There's some bold predictions, George.
And with that bold prediction, we're going to set a buzzer and timeout and complete episode number 31 of this podcast. Don't worry, we'll be back.
Call.
What?
I said also a missed fumble call.
Yeah, we're not gonna mess up this ending like the fumble, like the refs messed up that end of that Baylor Texas Tech game. So we're gonna put the halt on the conversation here to end episode number 31. But don't worry, we'll be back to recap Texas Tech football, look ahead to the last 3 games in the season. We'll definitely recap with rankings, the second rankings after the big weekend in college football, and much more here on episode 32 of the Fifth Quarter Podcast. For my colleague in Lubbock, he's
Desmond McLaughlin.
And I'm George Coffin, College Station, signing off on a Friday evening, saying so long from the Fifth Quarter Podcast. Happy college football Saturday, and see you next week.